Okay, hi there, Aaron here, hope you're doing okay. Today I'm going to be talking about this brick of a novel. It's War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, and I read this for the first time fairly recently, and I thought instead of doing an out-and-out review, I'd just go through 5 reasons why I think it's worth reading, and 5 things that I really quite liked about it. To maybe, if you're considering reading it for the first time, just maybe give you that bit of a push to give it a go. But even if you have read this before, it'd be cool to see what you think about it, whether you agree or disagree, whether you have your own reasons for or against reading the book. But yeah, I mean, it's not, it doesn't really come across, as the easiest book to read. I mean, the size of it, the edition I have here is, I think clocks in at about 1,300 pages, something like that. But also then you might open it up at the beginning. There's loads of French in there. So again, if you're not a French speaker, maybe not what you're expecting. But yeah, I'm hoping that these 5 reasons it might convince you to give it a go. Yeah, the first reason why I think it might be worth reading, a cool thing about it is just the way it's structured, really into 3 main parts and an epilogue, and then each of those is split up into these volumes and smaller parts, and these chapters that are really only a few pages long. I think it's very rare that you get a chapter that's more than 5 or 6 pages. So it's sort of counterintuitively, it's a really good book to have out and about with you, to just read in little snippets here and there. So yeah, it might not be exactly what you're expecting right at the beginning, but fairly manageable with these small little chunks. And then the second reason is really getting a little more into the nitty gritty of the book, and what Tolstoy is really trying to do with the book. And that's his view of history and I suppose, of subjectivity. And so he's trying to really get away from the idea that history is shaped by great men, by these sort of forces that sweep across the world, or whatever. And instead he's, arguing that, or making a case for the fact that history is shaped by individuals and loads of small individual actions and really circumstances and coincidences and mistakes and all these things that play into it, and it's almost chaotic, or you could read it that way, that it's almost chaotic, and he's kind of saying that this idea of having the great man, and say in the case of War and Peace you think of people like Napoleon, he's kind of arguing that that's kind of a hang-up of the earlier view that that fate is really in the hands of the gods and things like that, and that maybe post-enlightenment that it's really more then to do with these great men of history and stuff. But really for him it's much more subjective, and it is down to these random individual acts, and there's a whole manner of things that go on. And really with this view in mind, he then argues that 2 sides of a conflict can look at an event, a battle, something like that, and say that they both won, and they're both right, but they're also both wrong at the same time, and that maybe there are no winners. And so it's a really interesting way to look at things, and it wasn't really what I was expecting for a novel written in the 19th, the mid 19th century. Maybe today we'd shrug at that idea a bit more, or think it's not really that spectacular. But really, I think for the time, at least from what I assume of the time, it was quite surprising to me. Okay, then number 3, again getting into the nitty gritty of the book and the real strengths of the book, in my opinion, is the characters. And the characters in this book do really come alive. They do really feel like real people facing real problems and really struggling with circumstance or certain ideas and things like that. And they're kind of infectious. When they're feeling happy and filled with youth, you kind of share in their excitement, and you kind of share in their sort of feelings of despair when they're down in the dumps. And really the characters that develop, they don't stay in one place. They really do change, and a lot of that change is inward. There's a real deep sense of each character's, or at least with many of the main characters, a deep sense of their inner life and their inner development, whether it's emotional or spiritual or anything like that. A lot of the change and a lot of the drama of the novel is really quite internal. And although I haven't seen an adaptation of this, I imagine it must be quite hard to get that across. I don't really know how they do that. But yeah, really just the reality and the internality of these characters is really quite remarkable. And there are two characters in particular. There's Prince Andrei and Pierre, who we'll come back to in a bit, who for a large portion of the book, the way I imagine them, were really like the north needle and the south needle of a compass. And as one, as fate turns one in one direction, it spins the other round in the opposite, so that they're always the same distance away, but always turning around, and their circumstances always changing, and their view of things always changing. And it's just so exciting, and you get so invested in them. It's really quite remarkable. And then on to my fourth reason, which is a big one for me, and that's the writing itself. If you've watched any other of my videos, or where I'm talking about what I sort of love about what I read, I think that the writing is one of the big things that comes up a lot for me. Definitely in the past, I've definitely read novels for style alone, and definitely Tolstoy. He has his style. He's honed it, and it's definitely his own. It feels very original, very individual to him, and you'd expect with a book like this that it would be sprawling and sort of all over the place, and there are certain sections where maybe he is a little more generous, but really the impression I get is that it is rather honed, and rather he knows what he's doing with everything on a sentence by sentence level, and sometimes he might repeat himself, sometimes he might sum up a chapter with this little sentence, but then there are some really sort of marvellous sections that are just really lyrical and wonderful, sometimes in a very minute way, where it might be just describing water dropping off the branches of a tree, or it might be this sort of overflow of almost romantic emotion. But I thought I'd just share with you a couple of paragraphs that I really loved. So the first little paragraph I want to read is it's really finding one of our characters, Prince Andrei, in not terribly nice circumstances. He's lying wounded on a battlefield, and then this is sort of his perspective and the thoughts going through his head and stuff like that. There was nothing over him now except the sky, the lofty sky, not clear but still immeasurably lofty, with grey clouds slowly creeping across it. How quiet, calm and solemn, not at all like when I was running, thought Prince Andrei. Not like when we were running, shouting and fighting. Not at all like when the Frenchman and the artillerist, with angry and frightened faces, were pulling at the swab. It's quite different from the way the clouds creep across this lofty, infinite sky. How is it that I haven't seen this lofty sky before? And how happy I am that I've finally come to know it. Yes, everything is empty, everything is a deception except this infinite sky. There is nothing except that. But there is not even that. There is nothing except silence, tranquility, and thank God. Okay, and then the second one is the character Pierre. And without giving too much away, really, something's just happened which has given him a little more direction, has maybe steered his life off to a different course. This is his sort of journey home and him looking out of the carriage of his cart and just how he's feeling in this moment. It was cold and clear. Above the dirty, semi-dark streets, above the black roofs, stood the dark, starry sky. Only looking at the sky did Pierre not feel the insulting baseness of everything earthly compared with the height his soul had risen to. At the entrance to Arabet Square, the huge expanse of the dark, starry night opened out to Pierre's eyes. Almost in the middle of that sky, over Precheniski Boulevard, stood the huge, bright comet of the year 1812, surrounded, strewn with stars on all sides, but different from them in its closeness to the earth, its white light and long raised tail. That same comet which presaged, as they said, all sorts of horrors and the end of the world. But for Pierre, this bright star, with its long, luminous tail, did not arouse any frightening feeling. On the contrary, Pierre, his eyes wet with tears, gazed joyfully at this bright star, which, having flown with inexpressible speed through the immeasurable space on its parabolic course, suddenly, like an arrow piercing the earth, seemed to have struck here its one chosen spot in the black sky, and stopped, its tail raised energetically, its white light shining and playing amongst the countless other shimmering stars. It seemed to Pierre that this star answered fully to what was in his softened and encouraged soul, now blossoming into new life. Okay, and hopefully quite quickly, my fifth reason why I think War and Peace is worth reading, and this really brings across the last 4 points sort of all together, is that it's a novel that really feels like real life. I'm sure I'm stealing that from someone else. I'm sure I've heard it somewhere, but I can't remember where. But yeah, it feels like, maybe because of the characters, maybe just because of the size of the book, because it takes a while to read, that the events of the novel are going through, that they're transpiring as if they were really happening in real time. That's pretty cool to be so close to everything. And I think also just the depth of emotion and the way the characters experience things, the way it brings you so close, that might also have something to do with it. And it really leaves you with a sense of affirmation, a sense that for all its flaws, that life is really worth living. So yeah, it is, even though lots of really sad things do happen in the book, there are sections that are quite hard to get through, maybe emotionally for some people. At least I came away from this book feeling it was really life affirming, and feeling really optimistic. So there you go. There are my 5 reasons why I think War and Peace is worth reading. As I said, I'd love to hear what you think. If you've read it, if you have any other reasons you think it's worth reading, any reasons you think this book is not worth reading, it'd be cool to hear what you think. And then if you haven't read it as well, it'd be cool to see what you think, whether you think it's still worth reading or whether maybe some of the obstacles still outweigh any reasons for reading the book. So there you go. I hope you found that interesting. But that's that for now. Hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.